Hello, and welcome to my video podcast on the substance of pogroms of Europe in the 19th and 20th century. Let's begin, shall we? Anti-Semitism is a long ingrained aspect of European culture, dating all the way back to the Middle Ages. For many Jews, persecution was found regardless of their national home. The 19th and 20th centuries found their expressions of anti-Semitism in the form of pogroms. These attacks on Jews were often violent and sweeping, usually based in conspiracy, and resulting in the mutilation of any Jews who were unfortunate enough to be caught in its path. Additionally, pogroms were not just violence against the Jewish populace, but also against their property. Synagogues, houses, farms, and any other forms of property were caught in the wake of destruction, often leaving Jewish families homeless. These pogroms occurred mainly in Eastern Europe in regions such as Russia, Ukraine, and Poland, but were not isolated there, as they occurred in Western European countries as well, such as Greece and Germany, to name but a few. This paper argues that while socioeconomic conditions precipitated and correlated with some pogroms in Europe, the persecution of Jews continued beyond just economic reality and exposed anti-Semitic ideas rooted much deeper in society at large. Initially, the pogroms of Eastern Europe were not physically violent. Many historians, such as John Clear, believe that socioeconomic conditions were the root cause of pogroms. Thus, much pogrom activity, such as looting, was opportunistic. This opportunity resulted in complete helplessness for the Jewish people, as they were not to be touched during the pogroms, yet every pogrom where there was serious loss of life was marked by the rumor they were shooting into crowds. In many other cases, however, violence against Jews was committed from the beginning of the pogrom, such as in Odessa. In 1905, Odessa was one of the most violent pogroms that ever broke out, seemingly from economic unrest. There was perceived economic competition between those who were Jewish and those who weren't, as well as the prominence of Jews in the commercial affairs in Odessa that agitated the unskilled day laborers who were figured prominently in the pogrom. Oftentimes, after a pogrom was committed, after the violence had abated and the smoke settled, the Jews were still to blame. In Odessa and a plethora of other cities, anti-Semitism was a common characteristic, with many Russian and Jewish youths forming gangs that engaged in bloody brawls far before the pogroms ever took place. From this perspective, it is evident that anti-Semitism was ingrained in the youth who would not have fully conceptualized the relation between economics and distaste with Jewish people. It is important to separate the distinction of socioeconomic factors and cultural factors in this matter, as both were prevalent in causing pogroms. However, wherever socioeconomic preconditions existed for pogroms, anti-Semitic emotions laid much deeper and longer. Another factor that stirred anti-Jewish sentiment was the growth of their population. In many cities, the growing visibility of Jewish people seemed to enhance the predisposition of others, resulting in shifting of the blame of their difficulties onto the Jews. Whether by immigration or simple population growth as time advanced, the ever-increasing commonality of Jewish people began to worry local Christians. This perception of homogeneity and desire to remain a Christian land would inevitably cause Jews to be driven away despite their contribution to the economy. One of the most common beliefs of the time was that Jews were hoarding their immense wealth and exerting influence on governments to maintain power. This is purely concocted nonsense, as the vast majority of Jews were not only disenfranchised in many places, but destitute as well. However, the obvious absence of wealth did not thwart conspiratorial efforts, as the rumors of Jewish grandeur coursed through all of Europe's veins, often to much success. The harsh reality was that in places like Russia, where industrialization came to a screeching halt in the mid-late 19th century, the Jews all but lost their economic function and struggled to just feed themselves. The presentation of Jewish people to the public was consistently false, although likely intentional, as to deceive those who were very likely to act in pogroms and direct the hate away from Christians on one another. In this regard, Jews were being misrepresented as always wealthy individuals seeking to exploit those who simply weren't Jewish. The potential presence of Jewish political power was as terrifying as the fabricated limitless Jewish wealth to many Christians, especially in Russia. Following the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881, Russia entered a period of political instability that would continue until Stalin's complete consolidation of the nation in the mid-1920s. It is in part this political vacuum that allowed for many local agitators to fearmonger and spread the ideas that the Jews will rule over us, contributing further to alienating and thereby inciting pogroms against the Jews. As if the political vacuum were not kindling enough, after the Kishinev pogrom that resulted in a massacre of Jews, Tsar Nicholas II offered no compassion to his very own loyal subjects. In fact, his only statement recorded on the matter was simply, "Jews themselves are to blame." This direct abandonment of his subjects concretized the idea to the populace that Jewish people weren't in any way equal to them in civilian or human stature. Furthermore, in the regions of Ukraine where the Cossacks had once roamed, old memories of a glorious past kept anti-Semitism very alive. Many people saw the Jewish populace in Ukraine as representing landlord domination and serfdom, and thus otherwise peaceful Jews were made out to be greed-driven exploitative monsters. Scores of these ideas and representations were immortalized in the folk tales and songs of the locality. Yet folk tales did not cause every pogrom in Ukraine, and despite the political instability on a local and national level, pogroms occurred in Russia, Germany, and Poland in a matter of years. This indicates that though political instability may have been a driving factor, through history there was already hatred bubbling up from the people, waiting for an opportunity to burst. These factors were merely vehicles of excuse, enabling the hatred that was felt for so long to be justified. The protection of Jews during these pogroms was non-existent, and the only support they received was from one another, which to the masses of aggressors meant nothing. There are a multitude of instances in which militaries, police, and other protectorate groups directly violated their jobs and contributed to the attacks on Jews and their properties. Eyewitness accounts certify that members of police forces engaged directly in pogroms in plain clothes, directing pogromists to Jewish-owned stores or Jews' apartments, and firing their weapons, then blaming the shots on Jewish people. In these instances, even societal members who were removed from the poorer working class were frequently engaged in both pogroms and general anti-Semitic activities. Representation of Jews in mass media frequently attempted to deny the reality of their situations as best as possible. Reports of pogroms in Gomel were denied, for example, despite rigorous precautionary measures being adopted, which often happens post-pogrom. Furthermore, a pogrom in Galicia was blamed on the Jews by the New York Times, as they reported it was due to the Jews' refusal to ratify a peace treaty. To be fair, the further one is from an event, the harder it becomes to perceive it. However, America was one of the few Western nations that did not commit pogroms, as well as often supported the Jewry in their time of need. Regardless, this paper has demonstrated that anti-Semitic stances were prevalent through all classes, from the Tsar at the very top down to the destitute dock workers of Odessa, and that all kinds of people participated in pogroms against Jews. In conclusion, anti-Semitism was extremely pervasive across all of Europe for more than a millennia. However, after the Industrial Revolution, the Jewish people became an ever-increasing target for appropriating blame. The subsequent pogroms and slaughters that the Jewish people faced are simply unexplainable by one cause or factor. Instead, it is an amalgamation of economic conditions, fallacies and conspiracies based on nothing, and fear of political domination that made the pogroms possible. Most concerning of all, however, is the deep-rooted dislike of Jewish people that was consistently recorded across Europe both prior and during the pogroms. In each instance, there were already existing anti-Jewish precursors that enabled the aforementioned factors to become the vehicles for the damnation of Jews. Thus, there was something much deeper, inexplicably tied to Christianity since the Middle Ages, in the core of humanity that silently wanted these pogroms to happen. Thank you for listening.